Before we begin, if you enjoy documentaries about disasters, mysteries, technology, and the darker side of human ambition, make sure to subscribe because some stories are too unbelievable to ignore, and this one might be one of the most terrifying of them all. Now, let's go deeper. The ocean is one of the most terrifying places on Earth. Not because of sharks, not because of storms, but because beneath the surface there are places where humans were never meant to go. Darkness, pressure, silence, and thousands of meters below the water, there is one place in particular that has haunted people for over a century: the wreck of the Titanic. For decades, visiting the Titanic was considered one of the most dangerous expeditions imaginable. Only highly trained experts with advanced equipment could even attempt it. But then, one company claimed they were changing everything. That company was OceanGate, and their submarine Titan would become part of one of the most shocking disasters of the modern internet era. Because this wasn't just an accident, it was a story filled with warnings. Warnings that people ignored, warnings that engineers questioned, warnings that, in hindsight, seemed terrifyingly obvious. And in the end, 5 people descended into the darkness and never came back. This is the downfall of OceanGate. For most people, the deep ocean feels almost alien. We know more about the surface of the moon than we know about parts of our own oceans. That mystery attracts a certain type of person: explorers, risk-takers, billionaires, people obsessed with pushing boundaries. OceanGate understood this perfectly. The company presented itself as revolutionary, bold, innovative. Their goal was simple: make deep-sea exploration more accessible. And at first glance, it sounded inspiring. Who wouldn't want to witness the Titanic with their own eyes? Who wouldn't want to descend nearly 4 kilometers into the Atlantic Ocean and see one of history's most legendary shipwrecks? But there was a problem. The deeper you go underwater, the deadlier the environment becomes. At the depth of the Titanic, the pressure is almost unimaginable. Every square inch of the submarine experiences crushing force. One mistake is enough. One weak point, one failed component, one crack, and the ocean takes everything instantly. At the center of OceanGate was a man named Stockton Rush. He was ambitious, confident, and deeply convinced that he was changing the future of exploration. To supporters, he looked visionary. To critics, he looked reckless. And that distinction would become extremely important later. Rush believed traditional safety standards were slowing innovation. He openly spoke about wanting to break industry norms. Now, in technology, challenging old systems can sometimes lead to breakthroughs. But when you are operating thousands of meters underwater, risk becomes something very different. Because the ocean does not care about ambition, it does not care about confidence, and it definitely does not care about marketing. Many experts in the deep-sea community reportedly had concerns about OceanGate's approach long before the disaster happened. Some questioned the materials used in the Titan submarine. Others worried about testing procedures. There were discussions about safety certifications, warnings from experienced professionals. But the company kept moving forward and the missions continued. The Titan submarine looked futuristic, compact, experimental, different from traditional deep-sea vessels. OceanGate promoted it as innovative technology. But some engineers and observers were deeply uncomfortable with its design choices. The deep ocean is not a place where you casually experiment. Most submarines designed for extreme depths use highly trusted materials and extensive certification processes. Titan was different, and over time, concerns kept growing. Imagine sitting inside a small metal cylinder, no windows except a tiny viewing port, no easy escape, no rescue system capable of quickly reaching you. Outside the walls of the submarine is crushing darkness. The pressure is so extreme that if the vessel fails, it happens faster than the human brain can process. That is the reality of deep-sea travel, and yet people still signed up. Why? Because humans are fascinated by danger, especially expensive danger. Part of OceanGate's appeal came from the Titanic itself. The Titanic is not just a shipwreck, it is a symbol, a frozen moment in history, a disaster surrounded by mystery, tragedy, and obsession. People have spent generations fascinated by it. Books, movies, documentaries, conspiracies. The Titanic almost feels mythological. And OceanGate understood that emotional power. They weren't just selling submarine trips, they were selling access to history, access to something forbidden, something exclusive. And exclusivity is powerful, especially for wealthy clients seeking experiences that almost nobody else can have. The deeper the risk, the greater the story. At least, that is how it seemed. In June 2023, Titan began another expedition toward the Titanic wreck site. 5 people were on board. The world did not know that this journey would soon dominate headlines everywhere. At first, things seemed normal. Then communication was lost. And suddenly, the entire situation changed. News spread rapidly across the internet. A submarine carrying multiple people had disappeared deep underwater near the Titanic wreck. Almost immediately, people became obsessed with the story because the scenario was horrifying. Pitch black water, extreme depth, limited oxygen, no contact, and somewhere far below the surface, a missing submarine. The search operation became global news. People tracked updates constantly. Experts appeared on television discussing possible outcomes. Could the submarine still be intact? Were the passengers trapped alive? Was there still oxygen remaining? Every hour increased the tension. The internet became completely consumed by the disappearance. Social media exploded with theories, countdowns, speculation, and analysis. Some people focused on the human tragedy, others focused on the engineering concerns, and many people became fascinated by one terrifying question. What actually happens if a submarine fails at that depth? The answer is horrifying. At Titanic depth, pressure is immense. If the hull collapses, the implosion happens almost instantly, faster than nerves can send signals to the brain, faster than pain can even register. The human body has no chance. And as experts continued analyzing the situation, many feared the worst. The deeper investigators looked into OceanGate, the stranger things became. Reports began surfacing about previous safety concerns. Former employees reportedly warned about risks. Some engineers questioned the materials used in the vessel. Others worried about testing procedures. But despite the warnings, the missions continued. And that detail changed everything. Because the tragedy no longer looked like random bad luck. It looked preventable. And that is what disturbed people the most. Human beings can emotionally process accidents, but preventable disasters feel different, especially when warnings already existed, especially when experts tried to speak up, and especially when confidence may have overshadowed caution. Eventually, debris from the Titan submarine was discovered. The conclusion was devastating. The vessel had suffered a catastrophic implosion. There were no survivors. Just like that, the mission ended. No dramatic rescue, no miraculous survival story, only silence and shock. The story spread across the world because it combined several things people cannot stop thinking about. Extreme wealth, extreme risk, the Titanic, the deep ocean, and human overconfidence. OceanGate became more than a news story. It became a symbol of what happens when ambition collides with reality. Because modern culture often celebrates disruption, move fast, break the rules, challenge the system. But nature does not negotiate. The ocean does not care about startup culture, and physics cannot be convinced by confidence. That is why this story affected people so deeply. It felt like a collision between Silicon Valley thinking and one of the harshest environments on Earth, and the ocean won instantly. There is another reason this story became unforgettable. Deep down, many people are already terrified of the ocean, not because of creatures, but because of emptiness. The idea of descending into darkness with no escape triggers something primal in the human mind. The Titan disaster forced millions of people to imagine themselves trapped deep underwater. No sunlight, no rescue, no way out, just pressure and silence. That fear is universal, and once people imagined it, they could not stop thinking about it. OceanGate promised exploration, it promised innovation, it promised access to one of history's most legendary shipwrecks. But in the end, the company became part of a tragedy itself. The Titan submarine disaster shocked the world, not just because people died, but because so many warning signs appeared before it happened. And now OceanGate is remembered less as a revolutionary company and more as a cautionary tale, a reminder that some environments demand absolute respect, because no matter how advanced technology becomes, the ocean remains undefeated, and sometimes the deeper humanity tries to go, the darker the consequences become. That was the downfall of OceanGate. If you enjoyed this documentary, subscribe for more stories about disasters, mysteries, internet scandals, and the hidden side of human history. And remember, sometimes the most dangerous place on Earth is the one we still barely understand, the ocean. Thanks for watching.